You're listening to Transcendental Talks Toronto, transcending your mind, elevating your consciousness. Welcome to another episode of Transcendental Talks Toronto, the podcast where we connect with each other through discussions about elevating our consciousness from a spiritual perspective. Through conversations with a variety of guests, we delve into how to balance material and spiritual pursuits, experiences along the spiritual journey, self-improvement, the practice of bhakti yoga or devotion to the divine, challenges, tips, and inspiration, all in a way that is deeply fun and relevant.
Today's episode will highlight another way in which bhakti can transform one's life. Bhakti means connecting to the divine through loving service, and through relatable life experiences, will showcase how one can integrate bhakti into their life and lead a fulfilling life in all circumstances. I'm Punya Shravana.
And I am Radha Priya, and we're your hosts at Transcendental Talks Toronto.
And today we're really delighted to have a special guest on our show. Adi Kurma Das has been practicing bhakti since 1986, where he joined our movement in Kolkata. Since then, he's been serving in multiple roles across the world, including Toronto, Mayapur, New Delhi, Vrindavan, and so many other places. And Adi Kurma has an MBA and is also going to be teaching at the Alfred School of Management in this fall. Thank you, Adi Kurma, and welcome to Transcendental Talks Toronto.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Thanks for having me.
To get started, we just wanted to, ask you how it all happened, being part of the Bhakti tradition for so many years. What inspired you to join and become active in this practice?
So, it's funny that you asked this question, because if you ask my parents, they would have probably said like, "Oh, he will never join the movement." So I grew up in a family, where it's like the family was like, or let's say it this way, that it's a Gaudiya family, Gaudiya Vaishnava family, but it was not in the ISKCON lineage. But then my parents came across His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj and got initiated by him, and that was early 80s. And then those days there was no formal devotee care, but the devotees would actually come and visit your home, and they will try to kind of train you, mainly the Vaishnava etiquettes, because it was a very different ISKCON. It was very hardcore, if you want to call it. Like I remember walking into the temple, and if one of GBC member will walk in, everybody will be on the floor. So I'm talking about that kind of environment. But there was a lot of hand holding, if you want to call it. Devotees used to come and visit the congregation members, and then they will actually train you, starting from how to put tilak mantra, how to offer. They would actually, help you to set up an altar. Although they didn't have to do that at our house because we already had an altar. But devotees started to come in, and every time the devotees would come to our house, I would somehow sneak out. I didn't want to face them. And I was the only son, so and it was a joint family, so everybody could like let me do whatever I want. So, but then one day, one of the devotee just got hold of me. They came in, and I was just about to sneak out, and another devotee walked in, and that was my first encounter with devotees. And I really liked him. The reason is like, I was just looking at him, and he was very effulgent, and I was thinking like, there's something in this person, which is kind of attractive. And so, he started to take, he's an Italian devotee. He's no longer there. I mean, I think he left his body few years ago. But he was very very personal, And so, I felt like I started to build this friendly relationship with him. And the first book he gave me was Perfect Question, Perfect Answer. And I mean, there was a few other books were there, because, I think they probably made my dad a life member. So they brought in sets of Bhagavatam, and I looked at those books and I'm like, yeah, those are not for me. But this particular book, Perfect Question, Perfect Answer, and if you see the format of that book, it's like in question answer format. It was really nice, and that was the book I read, and I thought maybe there's something in this philosophy that I should, like dig in. And yeah, and time passed. I started to associate with them, and devotee association will change you, right? So, and I was like 15 years old, so you can only understand right in teens. And so, and at that time, India was kind of changing, going into like you got the MTV came to India at that time. So there was a kind of a social change was happening, and young people were getting more attracted to the Western culture than, their own culture. So obviously being kind of a brat at that time, I was like more inclined toward more of the Western things than, but somehow by Krishna's mercy, I got attracted. I read that book. I really liked it. I liked the association of this devotee. And that was my entry to spiritual life.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's really nice to hear how you got connected with Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers, because that's a book that we give out quite um,
Mhm.
profusely here in Toronto, and we view it as one of those books that can really give an introductory perspective on someone who's looking to start their bhakti path. So it's nice to hear that that's the book that inspired you to, move forward in your spiritual life. And I'm just curious, like I was reading your biography a little bit earlier, and I think you've traveled through so many different parts of the world. Tell us about how you came to Toronto.
Yeah, it's also like I think it was some planets must have aligned because it was Srila Prabhupada's centennial year. It was a big celebration worldwide,
This was 96, I think, right?
96. So it was a big thing for ISKCON at that time. And, I was waiting to get initiation, and my Guru Maharaj was in Mayapur, and, he decided that he will give me initiation. And he said, like, on the Gaur Purnima, come to my room, and you with a couple of other devotees will get initiated. And so I got my initiation. It was say around 10 o'clock, I believe, or 10:30. My Guru Maharaj wasn't feeling very well, and just and it was a big Gaur Purnima, if you want to call it, because it's a centennial Gaur Purnima, uh, but it's Srila Prabhupada's centennial. And so literally all the ISKCON gurus were in Mayapur, and there was a big pandal, and in the pandal, all the gurus were sitting and they were giving initiation. So it's a huge function was happening. But unfortunately, he wasn't feeling well, so I couldn't be part of that big pandal. So I went to his room and got my name. And then when I came downstairs, and like now you're going around asking for Guru Dakshina, that you collect Guru Dakshina and you want to go and give it to Guru. And so I came across a couple of devotees, and they were just, like kind of congratulating, and they're giving some, rupees, so I was collecting. And then uh, one of my god brother introduced me to, at that time, the regional secretary for Canada was Kala Prabhu. And so Kala Prabhu came up to me and said, Adi Kurma, now that you got initiated, or at that time I was Indranil, said, hey, Indranil, you got initiated? I'm like, yes. And he was like, oh, so now that you got initiated, I have something for you. I'm like, okay, what is it? So he goes like, why don't you come to Canada, and you can do some youth preaching because I was already active in youth preaching in Kolkata at that time. And so that was kind of a, you know, shocking for me. And I'm like, okay, I'm in Mayapur, got initiated, proper centennial, uh, you know, the planets are all aligned, and here's an invitation that come over. Uh, and then in the afternoon, Guru Prasad Maharaj reached out to me. He asked me to come to his room, and this is all happening in Mayapur. And he said, "Oh, Ali Kurma, why don't you come for preaching, youth preaching in Trinidad?" So now I'm in a dilemma, in my mind. Oh my God, like now Canada and Trinidad, right? So I actually went to my Guru Maharaj and asked, like, where would you where would you like me to go? Should I go to Trinidad? Guru Prasad Maharaj is asking me to go there, or should I go to Canada? And he looked at me and he said, I will leave it up to you, but maybe you should start with Canada and then go to the island country. Because as soon as you go to the island country, there's a lot of allurement. And in Canada, it's more cold. So I think you'll be you'll be safe. So, I kind of chuckled, but I thought it was like kind of a funny thing that he said. But just and because he said Canada, then I like, okay, that's what I'll do. So I went and you know told Kala Prabhu that yes, like arranged a letter and I will go and get my visas and so on and so forth. And the comfort level for me at that time was Bhakti Raghava Swami. He used to live in India for quite a while, and he was one of my mentor in youth preaching. And I knew like he was at that time also a co-GBC for Canada. I'm like, okay, that's a comfort for me. So yeah, and that was in March, and in April 14th, I still remember it was Bengali New Year, and I was at the airport, and my mom was in tears because it's a big day for Bengalis. It's a New Year, and she was basically like kind of seeing me off at the airport. So yeah, so and then I arrived here on 14th of April in 1996.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice. So you did mention about how were involved in so many services with youth and youth preaching, not only in Toronto, but in other parts of the world. So what inspired you to continue doing that youth preaching? How did you inspire youth to take up bhakti? Because it's really difficult as youth to, decide to take on such a big um, part of like spirituality in your life. So how did you go about doing that?
Youth will always attract youth. It's like a fever, like you get into that wave, and Krishna shows you that you know how you are changing other people's life. So you go in, you give a book or even a small box of prasadam, and this young college students, they're so happy, or they will just get into a very vibrant argument with you or debate with you that no, there's no God. And then, like you get into it, and then it just, it just makes it very very sweet in a way, but at the same time, it's challenging because you've been challenged, and being a young person, you don't want to, accept defeat. So sometimes I remember I would probably like make up something just to kind of win the debate, but but it's like kind of a sweet thing, like.
Is there, like, when you talk about the youth, I know you did it quite early in your um, spiritual life here in ISKCON. Do you see anything changing over time, like the youth currently, in terms of what their expectations are versus in the past?
I think fundamentally, probably no. But when you actually look at how the world has changed and how the priorities has changed, even within the young people, I think it has become more challenging now
Mm.
because I when I think about youth preaching, say 2 decades ago, uh, it was still very referencing to books. They would like refer maybe Marx dialectical materialism, and we would be like fighting with by saying like, no, this is what in Bhagavad Gita it's saying. Nowadays, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit more challenging in a way. The way I look at it, it's the influence and um of social media. There's a lot of fake news, a lot of news that you cannot even rely, and they would quote convincingly saying that, no, this is what it is. And here's on the Instagram, this is what they're showing about you. And so it's a little bit different. But I think the fundamental, you know, the idea in youth preaching is to kind of get get their enthusiasm, and you kind of putting a little bit of ghee in that, but in a nicer way. So, the way you want to, I want to say is you still kind of reach out to them, but you, you have to connect with them. I think that is the most important. They need to trust you. Whatever you're saying, uh, you know, kind of is relevant. Because if they don't feel that, and and even at my workplace, that's what I find. Like if I go in and try to speak about Krishna, you will get a very small audience. But if I go in and talk about my you know my daily routine with meditation and spiritualism that I'm practicing, they're more inclined to listen to that. So I think you have to find also with the youth what really tickles them, because they all want to do something. Because when you're at that age, they want to change the world. I was like that too, and that's probably how I got in contact with the devotees. So if you can find that area where they have some interest, or just be a good friend. I think the key element is trust. They need to trust you. And then once they trust you and they become friends, then everything becomes very easy. Because then they will go with you for Sankirtan, they will go for book distribution, they will come, and, at your home program. But it has to be present, especially nowadays. I find you really need to catch their attention by presenting in a way that they can relate to.
Yeah, I really like that. It has to be, relevant to us and not something that's like old school. And, especially when you're talking about philosophy or preaching, you have to kind of frame it in a way that's not like trying to convert them or something. So it's something that applies to them.
Trust me, young people, they don't like to do the same thing what they see at home their parents are doing. Like I know my daughters didn't like the way I probably practice Krishna consciousness at home. They wanted to find something different. So I think you just have to package it in a way that is very relevant to them.
Yeah. And you just mentioned your daughter. So how did you navigate bhakti through, from before marriage, then getting married, then having kids? How did you kind of navigate that?
You know how you go through this change of body. So I personally look at it that way. As you mature in Krishna consciousnness, you also have to wear different hats to figure out how do you make this innovative? How do you present Krishna consciousness in a way that people will like it? So the way you would go in and talk about Krishna consciousness with, say, somebody who is 70 years old and being in the movement for 40 years, you don't want to do that same way to someone who's probably, 14 years old. And just getting to know Krishna consciousness, whether through friends, whether through books, or could be, you know, from the family. Like I know families, they are, devotees for maybe 20, 30 years, and their children absolutely hate it. They just feel like they've been forced. Like I felt that way. My parents would go religiously to Sunday feast every Sunday, and I really didn't like it. I didn't want to go. And I would argue with my father that show me something that is really relevant to me. Why am I going there, and standing in a crowd of your demographics, and I don't have anyone to like kind of really talk and find that, yes, it makes sense to me. I would rather stay home and go and play cricket with my friends. So I think it's coming back again to that when you're single, it's a different way how you approach Krishna consciousness, and you have the association also very similar. But now as you mature and then you become a grihasta, you have to find like-minded grihasta couples that you can actually relate to, talk to, confide in them, because every stage will have challenges.
Yeah, it's a nice reflection you shared, and I think some practical advice, especially when you start having kids. It sounds like your mode or the way you approach life kind of is much different than when you were single. And I know for a lot of young people in our movement, including myself, it's nice to hear that you're able to come in, try to be your authentic self. And I think that in doing that, we feel a little bit more complete, and we can naturally serve in a way that's pleasing to our own heart as well. So I really like that point you touch upon.
And the other thing is building relationship, right? Like, because at the end of the day, if you build a good relationship with, that's what it will stay,
Right.
right? And it's in every stage of your life. If you're single, you build good relationship, your single friends will stay with you.
So I'm seeing all the, having you witnessed all these ups and downs within ISKCON, like what has inspired you to stay the course? Because, there has been so many challenges.
Um, like it's you have to love Krishna consciousness. Let's put it that way. If you love somebody, let's say, for example, you love your dad or your mom, there will be certain things you may not like, or there may be something that you will clash, but you'll still love your parents. You'll still love your mom. And it's an unconditional love that they also give back to you in reciprocation. So for me, when I took the path, uh, my promise was to stay with Srila Prabhupada and his movement for the rest of my life. And when I kind of when our family just walked into this whole movement, that was also a very challenging time, because that's when a lot of gurus were falling down. So it could have been the other way around. We could have just said like, oh my God, this is something that we don't want to be part of, or I don't want to be part of ISKCON. But I think the relationship that we built with some of the devotees that we were associating, they were very caring, and and I just felt like I belong. And so for me, it was like, yes, things will happen as the organization grow. A lot of bad things we'll see, and a lot of good things we'll see. Now it's up to you to kind of, look at it and say like, oh, it's all bad because all I can see is bad, or I can see all good and some bad. And then you just have to say like, hey, you know, um, the best example I think my mom gave, and once I brought up this topic, and my mom said, "Look at your hand. You got 5 fingers. They're all different heights, right? But when you're eating with your hand, you're using all your 5 fingers, and they are all working as a unit." And so my mom said, like, there will be people like this who will come in the movement with different motives. They have different priorities, and they will look at it and join the temple or the movement for certain reason. If the motive's not right, they will leave the movement. But if you really love what Srila Prabhupada has done for us and given us, you should stick around. Like, we were just doing some reflection, my wife and myself, and my wife was talking about that. Can you imagine, a 70-year-old person going into New York? And New York, it's really not the best, right? It's stinky, it's dirty. And then he's like finding rooms to stay, which is not probably the best, and even the time when Srila Prabhupada went to New York, it's not the best time. Like now you can go and enjoy in Brooklyn or in Manhattan. I don't think it was like that in the 1960s. There were probably, drugs and so many bad things were there. But, when you actually look and reflect in what Srila Prabhupada has done, just taking that instruction of his Guru Maharaj to go in the West and preach, like my heart just, ache when I think about it. And I feel like, I can never show my gratitude to a Srila Prabhupada, even if I do the best of the best in my life, for what he has given to us. So I think if you love Srila Prabhupada, there's no way anyone can take anything away from you. You will always find good, even in the bad situation.
It's really helpful to hear your insights, over the years, especially as, younger devotees. The level of conviction that you have in Srila Prabhupada and the movement, it's very inspiring. And I, myself personally, we all go through our set of challenges, but when we hear, just the different levels it can go to, and that you still stick around, it's something higher that's bringing us here and keeping us here. So I do like that reflection you shared. Just one of the things that I found interesting in your profile as well is your involvement in the School of Management. I know that you have your MBA, you're pursuing your doctorate there as well. Can you speak a little bit about the management school and how the business translates into availabilities for devotees to get involved?
Yes, absolutely. So the whole idea of Alfred School of Management, it used to be part of Bhaktivedanta College. I think maybe 12 years ago. Devotees felt like we need to train managers. And, we got the best philosophy, but when it comes to organization and management, I don't think we are the best, right? So there was a need for it. And the whole idea of running the Alfred School of Management was to train devotees into management so that they learn the management principles, they can run the organization more professionally. So it was more geared toward devotees, but then, they opened it up for others as well. So it's, the curriculum is very at par with any business school that you will see. It's a general MBA that used to be offered, but now there's a specialization you can do on conscious leadership, because every module that you will do will have the conscious leadership element. So if you're taking operation management, there will be conscious leadership inbuilt in it. If you're taking financial management or even corporate finance, or even human resource management, because there's like 8 modules that you have to do, and it's provided online. So you can take those courses online. And there's a residency you do for 2 weeks. Now I think it's like 1 week. And you go in and you do practical scenarios. You deal with practical scenarios. So the year I did it, I was very lucky to have ex-ambassador of Croatia who came in as a facilitator, and they put you in different scenarios. So you act as a CEO, you act as a CFO, and you try to put those principles that you have learned throughout in the MBA courses in those scenarios to find solutions. So it's a really comprehensive, very nice course that has been built. We have quite a lot of graduates now, like devotee graduates. It's most of the teachers are devotee scholars that are teaching there. So it's like for devotee, you know, to make better managers.
I like that. How did you find that having this school, did you find that it helped in the, like, I guess, like, did you find there was a difference in how people kind of ran things after taking the classes? Like, what did you hear feedback?
Yes, we have a few graduates that are actually in prominent positions within ISKCON. So the whole idea is to kind of learn the principles and then put it in practice.
Mhm.
A lot of them, after doing the graduation, they went into independent management consulting. So it's also like kind of creating a career for a lot of devotees. The new trend that we see is like from Mayapur Gurukul, as well as like the international school. A lot of these young graduates, they are inquiring to kind of get into this program because it's very affordable program. So it's giving you a world-class knowledge curriculum, as well as you getting a specialization in conscious leadership at a very affordable fee. It's under 10,000 that you can, and it is accredited. It's the main school that actually the Alfred School of Management programs are affiliated to. It's called PPA. It's a business school in France. So we only offer the up to the MBA program is the main program, but now we are also doing like smaller programs like conscious leadership you can do, or on AI. So there are different programs that we are offering, because we're trying to bring in the courses that are relevant again, because if you see the way AI is moving, unless we adapt, there will be some challenge, right? Because we wouldn't even know, like you can do this deep fake through AI, right? So if devotees don't get aware of these different innovations and be relevant to what's happening, there could be some challenge, because you can get something coming to you through an email and saying like, oh, this is Bhakti Mark Swami talking and saying, and it could be just a deep fake. And
Mhm.
devotees may actually accept that, oh, wow, that's what Bhakti Mark Maharaj said, and we have to give donation for this particular project. And it could be just done through AI. But once you But when you know that these things can be done through AI, you'll be a little bit more cognizant and you will do your due diligence as soon as you get something. So that's why, we started to add some courses which are very relevant to what's happening in the world. So if you go on the website, you'll see that we just started the AI course now. So you can take that separately. And it's run by a devotee who is an expert in AI, and he lives in Sweden. So he created that whole course.
For sure. Yeah, you definitely have to cater it to each person. It's not going to be the same for everyone.
And one of my realization, growing up in India and taking up Krishna consciousness in India, when I came here, I realized Western world is very different. You cannot replicate what you do in India, exactly mirror replication in the West. It's not going to work. You have to use your intelligence and you have to figure out who's your audience, what is their level of understanding. You come down to their level if you really sincerely want to give Krishna consciousness to them. You have to do step by step.
Well, thank you so much for all your insights and perspectives. We really, really loved having you here on Transcendental Talks Toronto, and it was so inspiring to hear about your journey through Bhakti, how you've adapted, overcome challenges, and I really liked all your points about trust. So I'm sure all of our listeners would enjoy this podcast.
Thank you. I really enjoyed talking to you all. I hope, there was something that, some of the listeners can take from there and, put in practice. And thanks for having me.
Thank you, Hari Kurma, again for joining, and thank you to our viewers. We look forward to hosting another future podcast with nice devotees in the future as well. So thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.